You are listening to the Examine Life with Bram Levinson. Something that I've noticed in this process of learning and seeking and studying and applying and, I guess, sort of whittling away the layers of conditioning that I don't believe are helpful for me in this experience of life is that the lessons that I have learned, I need to relearn. There are life experiences that occur, there are epiphanies that land, flashes of insight that remind me of lessons that I've learned in the past that I need to reapply to, events that are going on right now. So many of you may have listened to the interview that I did with my friend Sean in the last episode of the podcast. And trust me when I say that that was one of the most enjoyable experiences I've had. Number one, doing the podcast, but also just in my career. Because for starters, Sean is a friend of mine. And I think I can honestly say that we hold a lot of affection for each other. We love each other a lot. I think we have a lot of respect for each other. And it was the first time I had done an interview for the podcast. And so while it was, a conversation that I knew was going to be aired and a conversation that I wanted to direct in a way that would be inspirational for other people, it was also great for me to be able to have some time to speak with her because that happens rarely, really, with both of our schedules. And we live on different coasts and different time zones and, so on and so forth. So I had a great time with it. And as soon as the interview was over, there was work that needed to be done in post-production. Now, typically when I just do a podcast like I'm doing right now, there's very little post-production. The audio file is mine. Obviously, it's on my computer. If I need to edit it at all to take out any hisses or pops or to, sort of edit out any of the conversation, the one unidirectional conversation that may be happening, if I want to edit any of that out, then I go into the software and I edit it out and sort of tack on the intro, tack on the outro, and there you are. With the interview, because Sean was on the West Coast and I was home on the East Coast, I had used an online software, a website, that essentially allows us to do this interview remotely from a distance. And what it also allows us to do is, or what it allows me to do rather, is it allows me to have access to the audio file of my side of the conversation, the audio file of Sean's, in this case, Sean's side of the conversation. So regardless of who I'm interviewing, that interviewee, their side of the conversation gets recorded as one file. My side gets recorded as one file. And then this website has post-production. And in this post-production, the website itself, the software automatically combines these two files into one file that I get to download and that I get to then present to the world. So, there was my file and her file. I had them merged. I got the finished file. And lo and behold, it was completely fucked up. It was out of sync in some parts. It was, the sound was off in terms of my levels versus her levels. And ultimately, it was just a bit of a disaster. So what I did was I just downloaded each individual file from this site and imported it into the audio editing software that I use for the podcasting and decided to work on it myself. Now, listen, I know that I could have contacted the company, sent them an email, maybe even tried to find a telephone number to reach them at, but I don't like to depend on other people to get what I need to get done. So I just figured, I would rather do this myself, even if it takes a little bit more time, but at least I know I can do it now. I don't have to wait for someone to respond to me. I don't want to be at the mercy of someone else to present what I need to present into the world. So I download these two files, and trust me when I say that it was a total shit show. Getting that final audio file together was a shit show. It was also an education for me because, again, I'm teaching myself this medium as I go along, and that includes the editing software. So, long story short, I spent probably about 3.5 hours working on post-production. The first hour and a half, I thought I knew what I was doing to sort of synchronize everything and merge it into one file. When I played back the file that I thought I had done it properly with or for, that file only had my side of the conversation. So at that point, I put everything down. I put it away. I left my home. I went to go, give a class, really. And then I came back and finished it when I got back home, and finished it about like 12:30 in the morning, which is unusual for me because I don't go to sleep that late anymore. But nonetheless, I got it done, and I was really proud of myself. And I remember just thinking, my God, I have never, ever worked this hard in my life, and I have never, ever felt this degree of satisfaction. It really is just a testament to what it's like to work with what you love, and to, do it immersed in purpose and dharma and all of those things. So regardless, there was tons of work that went into it, but I'm so proud of it, and I'm so happy that I have the file. I was so afraid that I was going to lose it all after the conversation that we had and the interview that was had. So I remember when I first got the file that was merged by the software and it wasn't good, I remember for a split second thinking, oh shit, what do I do now? And that literally lasted for like a flash, maybe like a second, 2 seconds. And then immediately I kicked into, okay, what do I do? Like from now I've got to act. And where do I go from here? There was a radical acceptance. And I realized in that moment that I had a choice, right? I could have either fought the battle of, the website is supposed to do this for me. I should not have to do it. I've paid for these post-production hours. And, I should be contacting them, and they should be paying for it, and I should be holding them accountable. Or I could just accept this is what was happening, understand, which I've understood already in my life and in my career, that if I want it done, and this is going to sound horrible, but if I want it done properly, I got to do it myself. So listen, I'm fessing up to potentially having some control issues, and, I own it. That's why I don't have an assistant yet. It's why I was going to say why I don't have a manager, but I think you got to be pulling in some serious money to have an assistant and a manager. So that's also a factor, but I digress. I just came to this realization, like, look, if I want it done properly, I'll do it myself. I will figure it out, trial and error, but I will get this done. And so right there was a priority made. Later on in the week, I got news from a student that he wasn't doing so well, that he had a bit of a setback on the path towards sort of healing and integration that we've been on, that I've been guiding him on through our coaching sessions. And that sort of stayed with me. The news that he gave me stayed with me after he had sent me the initial text. And I had tried to shrug it off, and it was just sort of like nagging at me. It was just there. No matter what I did, it was just bothering me because, listen, like it or not, whether it's deemed professional or not, I have a vested interest in the wellness of the people who come to me for guidance. And psychologically speaking, guiding them probably, I don't know, heals something within me. But nonetheless, I think that, I don't think that. I take my role very, very, very seriously as a guide, and I want to be guiding people towards their light and their, place of resolution. And so when I got this news, it stayed with me. And I don't want to say that I took it personally, but it weighed on me. I was definitely affected by it. And so that evening I went to bed. It was on my mind. I woke up in the morning still thinking about it. And then I reminded myself of a lesson that I learned years ago. And that lesson is that it can't all be my battle. I can't take all of it straight to heart and have it affect me on a level where my well-being is being affected, because at that point I'm of no use to anybody. If I'm constantly caught up in all of the things that, I find myself in indignation against, or that I object to, or all of the missions that I want to contribute to and be a part of, the uplifting and the awakening and the elevation so that things aren't so heavy and dark, if I think that it's all my work to do, I'm not going to get any work done. It's going to be paralyzing because, listen, I'm one person. I've only got so much energy to to expend out into the world, and there are only so many hours in the day. And so I woke up the next morning reminding myself, look, you can give a shit, you can care. And you can care about all of it, but you have to pick your battles about what you pay attention to. You've got to start to prioritize the things that you respond to and prioritize the things that you really feed with your energy and your attention, which doesn't mean that certain things just get left behind. And trust me, anybody who comes to me for coaching will be getting my attention because that's the contract, even though it's not so contractual. For me, I take that accountability and that responsibility unbelievably seriously because I believe that this is what I'm here to do in the world. I believe that I am here to accompany people through their moments of shadow, through their moments of darkness, through their moments of adversity and struggle, and do the best that I can to, accompany them through the other end of it, or to refer them on to people who can if I feel like I am out of my depth. So the following morning, this was the reminder that I came to, and something that I found fascinating when I really sat down to give it a think is that I realized that Hindu scripture, Hindu references talk about this. And once again, you're going to hear me referring back now to the Bhagavad Gita. And the reason why I'm referring back to the Bhagavad Gita is because it speaks specifically to what I'm talking to you about right now. Now, again, for those of you who are not familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, and I am operating from the assumption that some of you have not listened to some of the past episodes of this podcast in which I've spoken about the Bhagavad Gita, the Bhagavad Gita is, you'll find it as a book, but essentially it's a chapter of a much larger book. The much larger book is called the Mahabharata, and it is a story of family, and it's a story of war, and the story of revenge and betrayal and love and lust. And the way that I always describe it when I'm giving lectures about this it's referred to as an epic. Whenever I give lectures about this epic, I sort of speak about the Gita as if it were, for those of you who are old enough to understand what I'm about to say, you'll get a giggle out of this, but as if it were a mini-series from the 1980s. In the 1980s, all of the major networks, the three major networks, used to air nighttime miniseries where you would have like 3, 4, 5-part, essentially films that were cut up into episodes. And it was very soap opera-y. They were very soap opera-y, very Dynasty, very Dallas, very crazy things happened, drama everywhere you looked. And essentially that's what the Mahabharata is like. It's an epic. It is a sweeping tale of all of the extreme situations that we as human beings find ourselves in. And if you go into the Mahabharata, I forget how many pages, I want to say something like 18 pages of it, are what has been extrapolated from the Mahabharata and published as its own volume, as its own book, its own sort of offering as the Bhagavad Gita. And the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad means of the Lord, and Gita means song. And so this book the title of the book translates to the Song of the Lord. And in this book, or rather this excerpt from the much larger book, we learn that there's a boy, one of 5 brothers, who is going to war against their 100 brothers. And the 100 brothers are pretty much demons in human form. And the 5 brothers are going to war to reclaim the kingdom that was taken away from them by their 100 brothers. And the reason why they're going to do this is because the 100 brothers are ruling unfairly over this kingdom, over its subjects, and for the purpose of righting a wrong and bringing peace and freedom for all beings back into the equation, these 5 brothers have got to go to war. In the Bhagavad Gita, you've got one of these 5 brothers. His name is Arjuna. And Arjuna is on the battlefield right at the beginning of the battle. And he is in a chariot with God. And God is personified, or embodied rather, as Krishna. And the beginning of the Bhagavad Gita is Arjuna essentially talking to Krishna and giving him every single reason why he shouldn't go fight. He does not want to go fight. And in some interpretations of the Bhagavad Gita, the first chapter is referred to as the despondency of Arjuna. I want to read you a little bit so you understand Arjuna's state of mind here. And this is taken from the Bhagavad Gita, introduced and translated by Eknath Iswaran, or Iswaran. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but nonetheless, it's one of my favorite interpretations. And in the beginning of the book, in the beginning of the story that is being told, Arjuna is speaking to Krishna, and he asks for the chariot to be sort of wheeled into the middle of what will be the battlefield so that he can see the opposing army a little closer. And this is what the book tells us. This is direct from the book. Arjuna, standing between the two armies, saw fathers and grandfathers, teachers, uncles and brothers, sons and grandsons, in-laws and friends. Seeing his kinsmen established in opposition, Arjuna was overcome by sorrow. Despairing, he spoke these words. O Krishna, I see my own relations here, anxious to fight, and my limbs grow weak. My mouth is dry, my body shakes, and my hair is standing on end. My skin burns, and the bow has slipped from my hand. I am unable to stand. My mind seems to be whirling. These signs bode evil for us. I do not see that any good can come from killing our relations in battle. O Krishna, I have no desire for victory, or for a kingdom or pleasures. Of what use is a kingdom or pleasure or even life, if those for whose sake we desire these things, teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, uncles, in-laws, grandsons, and others with family ties, are engaging in this battle, renouncing their wealth and their lives? Even if they were to kill me, I would not want to kill them, not even to become ruler of the three worlds. How much less for the earth alone? O Krishna, what satisfaction could we find in killing Dhritarashtra's sons? A little side note here for you listeners. Dhritarashtra is this boy's uncle, the father of the 100 cousins. We would become sinners by slaying these men, even though they are evil. The sons of Dhritarashtra are related to us. Therefore, we should not kill them. How can we gain happiness by killing members of our own family? Though they are overpowered by greed and see no evil in destroying families or injuring friends, we see these evils. Why shouldn't we turn away from this sin? When a family declines, ancient traditions are destroyed. With them are lost the spiritual foundations for life, and the family loses its sense of unity. Social chaos is hell for the family, and for those who have destroyed the family as well. It disrupts the process of spiritual evolution begun by our ancestors. The timeless spiritual foundations of family and society would be destroyed by these terrible deeds, which violate the unity of life. It is said that those whose family dharma has been destroyed dwell in hell. This is a great sin. We are prepared to kill our own relations out of greed for the pleasures of a kingdom. Better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, were to attack me in battle and kill me unarmed and unresisting. Overwhelmed by sorrow, Arjuna spoke these words, and casting away his bow and his arrows, he sat down in the middle of the battlefield in his chariot. So I'm reading you this because Arjuna, basically speaking to God, starts to give every reason why he should not fight this battle. Now, the rest of the Gita is Krishna, again as God, speaking to this boy, telling him why he should fight this battle. Telling him not only why he should, but why it's his duty to fight this battle. And everything from this boy is born into the Kshatriya caste or class, which is the warrior caste. So, given the context of when this was written, the class that you were born into dictated the future. It dictated the path of your life. And so this boy is born into the warrior caste. He must be a warrior. But more importantly, he starts to tell him about life. Krishna starts to tell this boy about life and about what to focus on and what not to focus on. And essentially in the process, this epiphany that I had the other morning was that essentially what Krishna is telling Arjuna in this book is pick your battles. You will always find a reason that will back up whatever your agenda is, for whatever situation, whatever the circumstances are, you're always going to be able to find something that is going to justify your thinking and the way you want to proceed, the way you want to approach it. Krishna is saying to this boy, you're focusing on the wrong things. This is why you're focusing on the wrong things. And this is why you need to focus on going to battle and doing what is the right thing, not for you, but necessarily, or rather not necessarily just for you, but for all. And it brought back the lesson to me that essentially when I am navigating this experience of life, I am going to be presented with countless options. I don't know, and again, I'm going to be aging myself here, but I don't know if you, the listeners, are familiar with the Choose Your Own Adventure books. But when I was a kid, I used to read these books. It was a series of books called Choose Your Own Adventure. And the narrative would start out a certain way, and then you would get to a certain page, and it would say, if you want the protagonist to do this, then go to page 144. And if you want the protagonist to do this, go to page 96. And so you got to choose how the narrative unfolded over and over and over again. The relevance of these books was not lost on me and is not lost on me now, because we have the opportunity to navigate our lives in any direction that we choose. We have the option of focusing on whatever we want to focus on and making whatever we believe is our fight or our battle. And if you are like me and you're someone who is aware of injustice and aware of unfairness and feels compelled to not just react to it but respond to it, then it can be very easy to get caught up in everything that's wrong. And it can be very easy to start to shift negative reaction in response to the things that you see being done wrong or being perpetrated on other people unfairly. And so I think that it's only normal that we feel like we're pulled in a million different directions. Now, my situation may be somewhat specific because I have people who are coming to me with their challenges, right? I'm not necessarily going out to seek it. But if you partner that with the concept that occasionally I scroll through social media and occasionally I pick up news bites, even though I don't read newspapers or watch news or listen to news, listen, it can be a lot. And what can be deemed as wrong with the world can start to weigh heavily. And so I was reminded first when I was in post-production with the Sean files, and then, a day or two later with, just mulling over what was going on with this client, this student of mine, I was reminded that, I do have a choice. And that ultimately I have to remind myself that I have a choice, and that we all have a choice as to which battles we decide that we are going to engage in. There are going to be certain battles in your life that you may feel triggered by, but that ultimately are not your battles to fight. It is not your war to wage. There are going to be others that are going to hit you so personally that you are going to find yourself almost galvanized to get involved with. And those most likely are your battles. You don't have to feel responsible for everything, and you don't have to be responsible for everyone. You can't be. I think the greatest thing we can do with our time and our energy is empower other people with not only the knowledge and the awareness, but the tools to go to battle on their own for the causes that they believe in, so that we don't have to fight those battles all on our own, but rather we pass on the tools so other people can do it themselves. And I think that as a teacher and as a guide, I have been taught this over and over in my life, that it's not my responsibility to fix other people's problems. It is my responsibility to pass on, to transmit the information and the tools that have worked for me to them so that they can do it on their own. It's not about babysitting anybody. It's about helping people, mature into who they are meant to be through the life process, through the aging process, and through the time that they have with me and the time I have with them. So ultimately what I'm trying to say to you is it's not all your battle to fight. And I want you to really consider what I'm saying, because we live right now in a moment in time where everyone is hyper sensitive. It's almost like people are desperate to be offended, because the second they can be offended, they can shift the tension that they're carrying around with them. Everything seems so politically correct that there is no more sarcasm. There is no more nuance. There is no more innuendo or tongue-in-cheek. And if you know me personally, you know that I can have sort of often like a very off-color sense of humor. And trust me, that's only because I believe that the things that right now we're so sensitive about are meant to be discussed. They are meant to be brought into the collective, because we are supposed to understand each other. We're not supposed to be walking on eggshells around each other. We walk around on eggshells around each other, then we're all walking around hyper tense, muscular holding patterns, contracting our physical selves. Our minds are whirling. There is no well-being. There is no peace. If we talked to each other about each other and shared our experiences and allowed each other to fuck up, because we will, because that's part of the human experience, then potentially we would start to evolve not just as a group of subcultures and races and sexual orientations and demographically divided communities. We would move forward as a race of human beings, which is what we are. We're all just trying to do our best. We're all just trying to make the most out of this experience, to try not to suffer, and to hopefully enjoy our time along the way. So I want us all to understand that there will be certain battles that are ours to fight. There are going to be battles that are not ours to fight. We may have an opinion about it, but it doesn't necessarily mean that that's where we're going to expend our time and our energy. You cannot save the world. You can participate in elevating the vibration, raising discussion, bringing awareness to certain issues and certain injustices and certain fault lines or fractures in our collective consciousness. But you cannot expect yourself to be there all the time for everything. It just doesn't work that way. That is going to deplete you. And when it does deplete you, you are going to have nothing left to give. You have got to make sure that your cup is full if you're going to let others drink from it, for lack of a better reference. I want you to really give this a thought. Or rather give it a think. I want you to consider what this means to you, to not be able to fight every single battle. So many of us are walking around exhausted, depleted by this process of trying to live up to a standard that is not sustainable, of giving and paying attention and doing the right thing and being politically correct and making sure everybody else is taken care of, and hopefully being able to, continue on with our lives and not get sick and not hate the entire process. It's not your battle necessarily. Consider it. Give it a think. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. But give it a think, and I'll see you later. This has been the Examine Life with Bram Levinson.